So today, what we're talking about, today's date, 10/31.
That's tomorrow's date.
Tomorrow's date, 10/30. Somehow Halloween. Could be worse, could be elementary, and they are really wound up. So our Common Core Center. Today we're gonna talk about solving quadratics in Vertex form, okay? Solving quadratics in Vertex form, okay? So write that down. Let's see what this means, okay? So when we've graphed before, we always talked about the negative, right? About being the opposite. But today we're gonna actually solve. Now we do know this. I know that if there's an x squared, there has to be two answers, right? If there's an x squared, there must be two answers, okay? So whenever I solve any equation, I undo it. And when I undo it, I always like to do the opposite, because if I do the opposite of something, it will cancel it out. Again, it's an equation, so whatever I do to one side, I've got to do the exact same thing to the other side. So I look at this first equation, and I see the square. The opposite of squaring something is to square root it, because the square and the square root will cancel each other out. They're opposites. So then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to take the square root of 16. Now we've talked today, before we even started, that the square root of 16, if it comes from an x squared, has to be 4 and negative 4, right? Because there's got to be two answers. So we're going to have a 4 and a negative 4. So, all right, we're solving this. The square root will cancel the square, and we'll have then an x minus 3 is equal to plus or minus 4. Okay? Took the square root because it canceled the square. I knew it came from an x squared, so I knew there had to be two answers, a plus 4 and a minus 4. Okay? Now, I need two equations, right? If I'm going to have two answers, I'm going to get the two answers from two equations. One equation, so I need two equations. One equation is the x minus 3 equals 4. And x minus 3 equals the negative 4. So to get the answer, I take the x minus 3 equal to 4 and the x minus 3 equals negative 4. Now it's very simple to solve. It's just a really basic equation. So I'll go plus 3, right? So one answer is 7. Plus 3, one answer is negative 1. Okay, if those are the answers, and they are, we could check it pretty easily, okay? While you're catching up, if I plugged in 7, that's easy, right? Put 7 right here. So I'm just going to check my answers. If I put 7 right here, 7 minus 3 is 4. 4 squared is 16. Boom. That's the right answer, right? If I did the other one, put a negative 1 right here. I'd go, negative 1 minus 3 is a negative 4, but negative 4 squared, boom, it is 16. So both my answers do work, don't they? Okay. All right. You ready for number 2? Thumbs up. Maddie, are you ready for number 2? That Maddie. Oh, you're Madison. She's Maddie. You're Madison. I just making it easy for me.
He's recording, guys.
I am recording.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Okay, example 2. Thanks, Caius. Okay, example number 2. Okay, watch. Shh. Do not. I'm going to say it 3 times. Do not distribute.
Why?
Because if you go back to your order of exponents or your Aunt Sally, you have to do the exponent before you multiply, right? But you can't do the exponent. So we're going to undo it. We're going to actually divide by 4 first. Because the 4 is on the outside. So let's just get rid of the 4. Divide by 4, divide by 4. The 4 is gone. I'm left with x plus 1 quantity squared equals 9. Okay. All right. Now, what did we do right above? What did we do? Yeah, we square rooted it, didn't we? We square rooted it. So square root to get rid of the square. Square root, right? Again, there has to be two answers. So I'm going to have a x plus 1 equals plus or minus 3, right? The positive 3 and the negative. It's got to be both, because we know we take the square root from a square. It's got to be the positive and the negative, okay? Now, again, if we need two answers, we better have two equations. So one equation is going to be the x plus 1 equals 3, and x plus 1 equals negative 3, okay? And then I'm just going to solve. Minus 1, x equals 2, minus 1, x equals negative 4. Thumbs up. Sideways, let me see. Be honest. Okay, good. Thumbs up. It's really not that hard, is it? As long as you remember 2 answers, right? Okay, now example 3 is a little bit different, but let's just solve. What do you think? Let's just solve. So I'm thinking let's get rid of the 4. Okay, so let's just go plus 4, right? That's gone, so I get a 3x squared equals 72, right? Divide by 3. But it doesn't go in evenly, but that's okay. I've got x squared equals 24, right? If I divide by 3. So when I take the square root again, I'm going to have 2 answers. I'm going to take the square root. So I have x equals plus or minus. Remember, 2 answers. Plus or minus the square root of 24. And that answer is okay, but I'm just going to say okay because we can reduce it. Do you remember how we reduce square roots? So what times what makes 24? Ashlyn, what times what makes 24? How about 4 and 6? So how about x equals plus or minus square root of 4, square root of 6, square root of 4 is 2, plus or minus 2. So here's the thing. 24 is either going to be an ugly decimal answer. I mean, you can go square root of 24 and get an ugly decimal answer. Or we can leave it as the square root of 24. It is an irrational number. We can break it up. This is what I want better. If you can reduce it. I would never count this wrong. But if you're in a college math class, they're going to want the reduced answer. The analogy is this. Okay, I like to use this analogy. If I had 4/8 as a fraction, and you gave me 2/4, 2/4 is correct. But we wouldn't leave it as 2/4, would we? We'd take it further to 1/2. With square roots, the same way. If you can reduce a square root, you should, okay? All right, example 4. Now this one's a little harder. With example 4, it's just not going to work the way it is. I could go minus 25, but that doesn't do me any good. I could square root it, but that doesn't do any good because I got a 10x and a 25 and a 27. Anybody have any ideas on how to do number 4? Besides Brooks. Rose. Yes. Yes. Ooh, you are the smart girl. So Rose has got a great idea. So let's see if this factors. Okay. X and x, right? And then what times what makes 25? What about a -5 and a -5, right? How am I doing? I can rewrite this as, Brooke says x minus 5 quantity squared equals 27. Wait. That sure looks like, now it looks like one of these up here, doesn't it? Doesn't it look like one of these up here? Okay, so what are we going to do to solve it? Square root it, right? So I'll have a x minus 5 equals plus or minus the square root of 27. Again, 27 is not a perfect square, so it's an irrational number, so we're going to leave it like that. So we're going to have then x minus 5 equals plus or minus square root of 27. So what are we going to do to solve? You're ahead of me. Good. Let's add the 5. Hold that thought. I'm going to do that. So if I add the 5, plus 5, right? Plus 5, plus 5. You can't add these. You can't. You cannot add these. That's a square root number, and that's a regular number. So you cannot. So your answer would look like this. Your answer would look like 5 plus or minus the square root of 27. And that answer is just okay. It's not wrong. It's just okay. Brooks, what's a better way to have that answer? 9 and 3 will reduce it, right? So we could call this answer 5 plus or minus 3 squared roots of 3. So of course somebody in second period said, Mr. Davies, can I keep it like this? I said, sure. I wouldn't mark it wrong, but this is a far better answer. This might get you a little extra credit if you take it from here to here, okay? Molly, you're just scratching your head. Yeah. Okay, turn the page. Yes, no? Okay, here we go. All right. Okay, so what about number 5? What about number 5? Factor, right? Jane, did you say factor? No. Somebody said factor. Yeah, okay. It was Ashlyn. So it does factor, doesn't it? Into what? Factor. I agree. What does it factor into? X plus 3. Plus 3. Did I hear that? Which means we can rewrite it. Alexis as what? X plus 3 quantity squared equals 64. Okay, now we're doing great. Okay, square root, right? Square root. So I get an X plus 3 equals what? Square root of 64 is?
8.
How many answers? So we're going to have plus or minus 8. Thanks, Luis. But now we're not done, right? Because we should have 2 answers, so we need 2 equations. So I'll have an x plus 3 equals 8 and an x plus 3 equals a negative 8, right? Minus 3, x equals 5. Minus 3, x equals negative 11. All right. Number 6. Oh, I really don't like the way that looks at all. Okay, can we make it look better? We could factor, but yes, and we're going to factor. But do you mind if I don't like all these 2's and could I divide this whole thing by 2? Would that make that equation be better?
Could you?
Sure, let's divide that by 2 also, okay? So then I'm going to get an x squared plus a 4x plus a 4 equals 25 over 2, okay? Yeah, I sure can, Caius. Up and scoot. How's that? Is that better? That way? Right there. There. Okay, so now what? Now what? Now we can factor. How about x plus 2, x plus 2? You okay with that? Which we can rewrite as equals 25 over 2. Which then what are we going to do? Square root it. How many answers? So we get this x, is that me? Plus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 25 over 2, right? Hello? Okay, Kat and Lori, Caius, you gotta go to the office. Okay, so anyway, back to this. So I'm going to have, you ready? X plus 2 equals plus or minus 5 over the square root of 2. You okay with that? And if I subtract 2, I get x equals negative 2 plus or minus 5 over the square root of 2. That's okay. I would take that answer, but you know what? Didn't we learn a long time ago that you can't have square roots in the bottom? Didn't we learn that a long time? Solve the problem with the problem. So how about a better answer, which might be worth extra credit, possibly in a quiz? Negative 2 plus or minus 5 squared to 2 over 2. Much better answer. All these darn little tricks I keep teaching you, okay? Okay, example 7. Can I slide it up or am I going too fast? Well, when I look at example 7, and I really want example 7 to look like one of these. I want it to look like one of these or one of these. What I'm going to do is this. I am just going to randomly throw something out at you, okay? I am going to randomly go x squared plus 4x, and I'm going to go plus 4. I'm just going to add 4. Just going to add 4. Why did I throw that 4 in there? What is that? How's that going to help? Helps with factor. But one thing I do know about equations is you can't just add 4. My scale's off balance. What am I going to do, Rose?
Add 0.
Let's add 4 to the other side. What if I add 4 to both sides? Am I balanced? So if I add 4 over here, let's see what I get. I'm going to get an x squared plus a 4x plus a 4 equals 14. Okay. Now I can factor, can't I? I had to throw that 4 in there to factor, right? Factor xx plus 2, right? You guys agree with that? I can rewrite this as an x plus 2 squared equals 14, right? Square root. Are we going too fast? 2 answers, right? X plus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 14, right? Minus 2, minus 2. Okay, now here's the thing. That's a weird looking answer. But you can't really add or subtract those because one's a irrational number and the other's not. So you leave it at that answer. And there are 2. One is a negative 2 plus the square root of 14. The other is a negative 2 minus the square root of 14. Okay, so homework. There it is. Sydney, you got something for me or for one of my students?